I have today on the way home, like on my walk home, I was like saving all of Emily's theories, like TikTok photos, because I was like,
Yes.
we are pulling the receipts.
I am obsessed. No, this is the episode we've been waiting for. Stop. This is truly the episode that we've been waiting for. This is what we were made. This is what we were made for.
We only did
Truly.
the other 3 episodes so that we
So
could get
that
to
we could do this one. And this is when we really wanted to do, but we had to be inclusive.
yeah.
We're big on inclusivity and diversity and all of that. And so DEI is big for us. And
Huge. DEI is huge in the TGNF organization.
yeah, so we had to diversify, be equal in what we were talking about, and include everyone, no matter if they've read some of the books or none of the books. And so but this is the one for the real ones. This is the episode
I'm
for the real
sat.
ones.
I'm ready.
I mean, okay, so I guess here we are, everyone. This is episode 4 of 4 of the TGNF off-season offshoot Sarah J Maas Maasterverse miniseries. It gets longer every time we have a new episode. Every time I do this, I add a little more. But this is the episode in which, by the way, if you have not read every single book,
Every single page,
every single
every single
page
extra
of every single
chapter.
book, every single extra chapter by Sarah Janet Maas, do
Stop
not listen to
listening.
this episode.
Stop listening.
Do not
Unless you
listen.
want to just be confused and you don't want to read the books and you just want to see our crackpot theories, fine.
Fine.
But don't
But
be
I
mad
don't
at
like
us.
that. I
I
don't
don't like
really
it.
support that because I think that you should read them.
Yeah.
So, but this is just this is going to be a really fun episode because we're connecting all the dots.
We're the Charlie Day meme. We've got pins, we've got string, we've got bags under our eyes
Literally.
from not sleeping and only thinking about these things. Like when I tell you last night I could not sleep because I was just thinking about all the ways I wanted to
Yeah.
tie things together. She was unwell. I was like, I am so tired. I need to go to sleep, but my brain would not shut off.
Not stopping. I mean, okay, so
Hopefully at this point you guys have listened to our other 3 episodes. If you haven't, that's fine. You can just listen to the crackpot theories. But if you want other context for things that we might talk about in here, go listen to those other episodes because we do cover some book specific theories
this will just
that we
be
just kind of talk about.
a full universe-wide theory episode.
Yep.
So, yeah, so we've had 3 other episodes where we talked about A Court of Thorns and Roses, Crescent City, and Throne of Glass. And on the most recent episode before this one, Crescent City, was the first time we got to do a little mix and mash theories because we were confirmed in the end of Crescent City 2 that all of these worlds exist at the same time, maybe same universe. They're all in the same universe.
Yeah.
And there was a crossover. And so we know that Crescent City 3, which is coming out in less than a week, will be a crossover episode. It's the Not So Sweet Life of Hannah Montana. And so
Hopefully it's the first of many crossover events.
first of many.
I don't think
And
that Sarah can wrap this up in one book.
No, definitely not. We're in it now.
We're in it
She said, I'm done writing separate series. We're in it now. And so this episode is now going to be our absolute insane ideas for how all 3 of these book series are going to intersperse.
Yeah.
So we're super excited. This is literally all we do. So I mean, the first, we have a couple questions first, and then we're gonna get into theories, and then it's gonna go downhill. We're at a plateau right now, and we're about to drop off the cliff. So on the plateau at the moment,
should I get my tinfoil? I should put my little tinfoil.
Literally, we should make some tinfoil hats right now. Make them into horns or something
for the summit, for sure.
That's an activity we're doing during the summit.
Decorate, DIY your own
DIY tinfoil hats. So the first question here is, which world do we think is going to be the center of the next book? Are we going to be spending more time in Prithian now that Bryce has landed in Prithian, or are we going to be seeing more POVs from Midgard about like what's happening while Bryce isn't there? And also, do we think that Bryce is making it back to Midgard in this book?
I think it's going to be a pretty even split between the two. Um, can you imagine? Oh my god, would be my absolute worst fucking nightmare. Is if Sarah literally drops Bryce in Prithian and then spends the whole book
In
in
Midgard? We know that's not true because we
I
did
know
see that
because
she did like leak she leaked her own sentence, and Bryce is with Azrael and Nesta, but that
yeah,
would be horrible. Oh my
that would
god,
be
what if though? But what if? So here's my thought on like if she's going to make it back. I think it's going to be another like cliffhanger, and like end of the book is going to be her like opening up a portal to what we think is Midgard and her stepping through it and like fade to black. We don't know
yeah.
where she ends up. But what if they obviously people are in Midgard are gonna be trying to find a way to Bryce too. Like I don't think people are gonna rest like being like, okay, well, hopefully Bryce makes it back. Like people are gonna be trying to
Yeah.
figure out their own way. What if Bryce finds her way back to Midgard, but like Hunt finds his way to Prithian and it's like a in one door out the other kind of situation?
Well, that would
I'd be mad.
fit with that would fit with the uh myth that I talked about in the
Mm-hmm.
Crescent City episode we did about like
Yeah.
Ishtar going down to hell and then like in
Swapping
and
places.
they're swapping places. So
Yeah.
that would kind of fit. But the
Another
only
thing
thing
that Nick was talking about in terms of like Bryce trying to get to hell was he was like, do we think the Court of Nightmares? Because we don't really know almost anything about the Court of Nightmares. And all of the like beasts and like creatures in the Court of Nightmares are very similar to like what we hear of when like Hybern attacked and when the gates to hell were
right.
unlocked in Midgard.
Well, let's consider that the seventh floor of the library, like the basement, could potentially be a portal to hell. We don't really
Mm-hmm.
know. Obviously, everyone is very afraid to go down there. It's kind of like taps into your worst fears, your worst nightmares.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always Nesta's kind of referring to it as like there's like a purring, like it purrs.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously we
And
know
Gwen's
Ada
like, it feels like a cat behind me.
a cat
Adis
purring.
is a cat.
Obviously, Adis is a cat. So like that's kind of one theory that like that's kind of a way in and out. But also, I we talked a little bit about this. I think maybe in the Crescent City one, they're all merging together. But obviously, we talked about how Sarah keeps a list of all of the names that she uses,
Mm-hmm.
and she very regularly does not reuse
Yeah.
names and is very intentional about them. And so the fact that there's kind of a throwaway line
Lord
in
Lord Thanatos and his
yeah,
daughter.
Lord Thanatos is having issues with his daughter. And that's kind of like the only mention of this character that we get. But then in Crescent City, Thanatos is one of the princes of hell. So
Yeah.
there's a theory that yes, Prithian is actually one of the levels of hell because Thanatos actually lives there. And he resides within the Court of Nightmares. So it is kind of
Yeah.
piecing together. So it's not out of the question for me.
Here's another thought.
Tell me.
In terms of Prithian
We're
and
not okay, scrap the questions. We're getting into the theories.
sorry. Well, maybe we'll sprinkle some questions in, like sprinkles on top of a
I don't
sundae.
care. I just this is how our conversation
This
goes.
is
We
how the
just kind of
conversations go.
this is we're piecing the pieces
So
together.
I'm thinking about the fact that they always describe them as like portals. And like again,
Mhm.
we talk about Sarah being intentional with names. She's also very intentional with like word choice.
It's not even actually portals. It's gates.
Right, but she talks about like gates and portals are kind of like synonymous.
Yeah.
And
But I think
remember,
gates are important to note
yes,
here
yeah,
in
they
terms of
are.
crossover potential.
But there's also the fact that there are several portals in Prithian that are like shortcut portals.
Mhm.
Remember, Feyre enters a cave and it's like a portal to the underworld, or like they enter a cave and it's a portal out of the Autumn
The
Court.
spring court, yeah.
And so, like, could there be other like portals that would actually just bring you into somewhere that's hell? Also, people are always like, everywhere in Prithian, there's like these three mountain ranges that are like, or three mountains that are very big. And there's something underneath all of them because there's the mountain in the middle, which is under the mountain. There's
Hmm.
the prison that has a mountain, and what's under the mountain? The prison. Then there's Ramiel. What's under Ramiel? We don't know.
We
But do
don't
you want to
know.
know what's on top, though? Do you want to know what's on top?
Tell me.
The fucking thing made of obsidian. It's like a black thing. And guess where else we see those? The gates
So
in fucking Crescent,
the
no,
onyx,
Throne of
the
Glass.
onyx stones, correct. And that is a portal, and that will take you to where you need to go.
Yeah.
Now, one thing I
And
also
I'm
want
like,
to talk
what's
about,
under Ramiel though? Because
what's
it
under Ramil.
it makes it goes to it would make you think. And there's also, it's very important that there's an archway on Ramiel that Nesta defends the line, but they call it they alternate between calling it an arch and a gateway.
Mhm. Mhm.
So
Now,
what is it really? Sorry, my
before we
face
just
is, I'm like so amped up. My face is literally like
on
warm right
fire.
now. I'm like I am getting worked up.
One thing I wanna talk about
Alrighty.
around the portals before we get into
Yeah.
the Ramiel situation, because I have some content around
Mm,
that,
mhm,
is
mhm.
that one thing we're not really discussing a lot is the, Pond of Starlight in the Spring Court.
No, you know I have a
Now
well-rounded theory about the Pond of Starlight. You know I have a
now
whole thing there.
I know, so let's get into that a little bit, because I think there's a lot of interesting content around the Starlight Pond in the Spring of Court. What is it doing there? We've kind of touched on it. I don't think Sarah put that in there for no reason. Kate, would you like to tell me your
I
theory,
would love to. So
please?
this is a piggyback theory on, if you listen to our ACOTAR episode, Nick brought up a theory that he thinks that Rhysand is not actually like
Yes.
the hero, and
Yes.
like he is like a little bit maybe a bad guy. And here's my thought. I have several levels to this. You know, there's several different like avenues it could go. But I think, oh my god, I like don't even know how to start this because it's like it goes so all over the place. But I think that, backing up, there's the whole thing about Reese's sister and
Yep.
his mom being
Mhm.
killed by Tamlin's dad and brother.
Mhm.
And then like their wings being put up in the library. We never see, or in the study, we never see them. And he's like, I burned them a long time ago. So that's one thing. That's like, okay, what happened with all of that? And then there's also a theory that Rune Danan, his mom, if you've
Dannon.
read Danon, Danon, whatever. Well, there's two A's, so I feel like it's like Danon.
It's Dannon.
Damn, they should have done. She should have done the like Mass, MAA. Anyways, there. If you've read the bonus chapter for Crescent City 1, there's a bonus chapter where Rune goes to see his mom, and like she's described as like having like dark hair and his eyes, and she's also from Avalon. She's of the Avalon Fae,
Yep.
which we'll get into, but they are basically, everyone thinks they are from the Dusk Court in Prithian, and
Right.
that's everyone. And so there's a theory that Rune's mom is actually Reese's sister, and that she was involved in like the thing with the harp and got
Yep.
locked in Midgard and had to like left Prithian. And now it's like, well, how did she get there? Why did she do that? Especially like the last we heard of her, Tamlin killed her, or
Mhm.
Tamlin's dad killed her. So my thought is that actually Tamlin and Reese's sister were in love or involved. Like they loved each other. And something like maybe Reese isn't a good guy, or like something happened and Tamlin was almost protecting his sister
Mhm.
from Reese and was like holding her in the spring court, like protecting her there, which could also go back to his mental state about Feyre being taken to the night court. Like
Yeah.
that could be like, that was PTSD because that was
Mhm.
crazy how he responded. And so maybe he's like, not another one that I love being like taken by the night court or
Mhm.
like having bad things happen to her. So I think that Tamlin was in love with Rhys's sister. He was like holding her in the spring court, and then all this stuff went down, and they almost like faked her death. And because he can also he's a shapeshifter. So
Yep.
I'm like, I wonder if he can shapeshift other people and like
Mhm.
make someone else or like glamour someone to look as though it was a dead body of Rhys's sister, and like glamour something to look like wings on the wall even though they weren't actually. Or maybe the wings were tame because Room's mom doesn't have wings. Who
Yep.
knows? But then I think he had to almost like smuggle her out and was like, okay, I'm sending you to the dust court for a little bit till like the dust settles. And then she was there when the whole thing happened where those Fae were
Mhm.
sent to Midgard. And then I think that the Pond of Starlight is like in honor of her. And that's why it was really special for him to bring Feyre there, because it was like his lost love and he's bringing his new love there. And that was like why it was so special. So
See,
there's a
I'm
couple of
partial
ways.
to that this Pond of Starlight is a portal,
Oh,
and
even though they went in it.
he put her through it, and
Oh,
that's
okay.
how
So
she
like
ended
we're
up
not,
in.
she didn't go to the dust court. She
No.
was just like,
Yeah,
ooh.
entered through she entered in a different way.
Mm.
So, but also interesting comparison about like Rune's mom being Rhys's sister is that there's a theory that Maeve is actually Rhys's sister
Yeah.
because they
And
have
Maeve, if
very
you're like, if it's been a while since you read these series, Maeve from Throne of Glass,
yeah,
the Queen of the
which
Valg.
when in ACOTAR we talk a little bit about Daglin and Rhys lying about his age. So for this to be true, Rhys has to have lied about his age, his origins, and his true form. This is possible as Velk can alter the memories of everyone around them to suit
Mhm.
the narrative, right? We talk about this with Maeve. This would position Rhys as the true villain in the series and make future plans to be the High King. Even though he says, I don't want to be High King, I don't want to be High King.
A likely
But
thing for someone that wants to be a High King to say.
exactly. And again, one of my favorite people on TikTok is Emily's theories. I literally eat her shit up. Every time she posts a new video, I'm like, this is it. So she
She's
says,
very
however,
convincing. She's like
yes,
so convincing in the way that she says things too.
yeah,
I'm like, you could literally tell me anything and
anything.
I'd buy
Yeah.
it.
She goes, however, what I believe to be more likely is that Rhys and the Illyrians are descendants of Maeve and her Val King husband, Orcus.
Mm.
Orcus was one of the three Val Kings, if you remember, in Throne of Glass, and he's said to be the most powerful. And he was married to Maeve, and when she disappeared, he visited many worlds in search of her. What if his brothers and his children landed in Prithian? In mythology, Orcus is depicted as bat-winged death god. What if Orcus and his children bred with the Fae, creating the Illyrians? So essentially, this would make the Illyrians similar to the witches in Throne of Glass because they have like this Valg blood. They can harness great power that can end the user's life, siphons the yielding. Um, and so this would also explain the monolith on the top of the Illyrian
Mhm. Yeah,
mountain
sure fucking would.
on Ramiel, a stone that is onyx black in color, humming with ancient power with unknown origins. Could this be the Valg Wordstone? And is it a coincidence that Maeve's handmaidens, the Stygian spiders, reside in the Rune Mountains in Throne of
I
Glass?
forgot the Rune Mountains.
So don't even forget that. And so let's look at their titles. Maeve, Queen of the Night; Rhysand, High Lord of the Night Court; and Rune, Agent Knight.
Yeah,
So
dude.
it's all
Yeah.
kind of coming together.
Because there's no way that Rune and Reese are not
No.
related in some way, especially because when Bryce lands and Reese walks in and she literally is like, Rune?
Yeah. It's all too convenient. And so basically one of the things Emily talks about is the fact that both Maeve and Reese have the same form,
Hmm.
where they're both kind of like talons and dark, and the way that they describe their powers is like claws in each other's minds. And so it's all very, very interesting to me.
And another part that I wanted to bring up on our ACOTAR episode
Yeah.
that ties into this in terms of Reese being like Valg or maybe even one of the Asteri or like descended from an Asteri is that, and I talked about this in ACOTAR, and it was a question mark that I had, but I didn't get to like answer my own question mark with my own thoughts. But the question mark I had was that Reese and Feyre were saved in the exact same way.
Mm-hmm.
They were both given kernels of power from all of the other High Lords.
Yep.
And for Feyre, who was immortal, that went into her and it turned her Fae, and she ended up like coming back to life with all of the powers, like all
Yep.
powers from all seven High Lords. When Rhys dies, we have all the six other High Lords give again a kernel of power, which brings him back to life. But he says, "You guys will be glad to know I don't actually have any other powers. I only have mine." And there, we theorize that maybe he does. Maybe he does have all of those powers, but he is lying about it.
Mm-hmm.
But what if he really doesn't? And that would mean that he basically ate that power
Yep.
and like drew energy from it. Who else
Yeah.
do we know that does that? The Asteri.
The
They
Asteri.
drink, and the Daglin, who were the Asteri, but in like the ACOTAR world, they're called the Daglin, and they drank the like magic of the world like wine.
Like wine,
And
dude. Like wine.
What else does Rhysand always have in his house? Nice wine. So we
Yeah.
know that he loves wine. She uses that metaphor, and then everyone gives him power and it brings him back to life. That sounds to me like he's kind of like eating it and getting
Yeah.
energy from it rather than like absorbing that power and having the power.
Yes.
So methinks that he could be maybe not an Asteri, but maybe a descendant of.
No, so here's the thing is that Emily also says that she doesn't actually think that the Asteri and the Daglin are the same. She thinks that the
Mm.
Daglin are Valg and the Asteri are
Mm.
different.
Mhm.
So she says
But
SJM
they just, like, do
led us
similar things.
has led us to think that the Daglin is the Asteri. I believe this is incorrect. Yeah, like she said, the Daglin drank the magic of this world like wine. She thinks that the princes of hell are also Valg, right?
Yes. Okay, I like
Daglin
that.
princes of hell are Valg.
Which
So
would make sense because they are when they appear to Bryce, they're always described like, the
blonde
Valg princes.
hair,
Blonde
right? Like
hair, beautiful, like,
right. So
really pale.
we talked about this like how is Lanthes described, right? Lanthes is a Daglin, he's an original evil from this
Mhm.
world. He bled black blood,
Yep.
a trademark of the Valg, and
Trademark.
his true form is blonde hair, black eyes, which is identical to both a Valg prince and a prince of hell.
Yep.
So exactly like Apollyon. And so we can also say that the Reapers also bleed black blood and they originate from hell. And let's not forget that Erewhon's two older brothers are still alive. Orcus is said to be the most powerful Val king of all time, like we talked about. And in mythology, Orcus is depicted as a bat winged god. When Apollyon appears to hunt, he has leather bat wings.
Hmm.
And so when Reese first describes the Daglin, it word for word matches the description of the Valg in Irene's book. What's more is that the Valg in Irene's book were standing atop a mountain with an archway of black stone. This is a description of Ramiel. Could the three stars atop Ramiel represent the three Valg brothers?
I'm, like, obsessed with that theory, like, it's one that stays with me.
Yeah. And so the theory is that the first High King of Prythian was actually Orcus, aka
Mm.
Apollyon. A mere Fey warrior is not capable of overthrowing the Asteri, but the Star Eater is. Daglin either created or stole or used the Dread Trove. Erewhon was called the Dread Lord, and the Dread
Mm.
Wolves in Crescent City are said to be demons. Lanthes, who bled black blood, like we said, showed Nesta a vision of them using the Dread Trove. And don't forget, Amryn is thrown into the prison at the time of the Wild Hunt when the Daglin are running wild. And what was she? A being of light and fire, something that the Valg notoriously hate. And so it explains how Shadow and Valg powers are so prominent throughout Prythian. I also believe Rhys to be Finn's slash Apollyon's direct descendant. This is why he has the powers of a Valg king. It also explains why his beast form is identical to the Daglin beasts,
Mm-hmm.
right?
From the
And
Wild Hunt.
so her theory is that Fion, whatever, is
Yep.
actually Apollyon. And so he was one of the princes of the pit, actually a bad guy. And
And
so
who's
Prince
also Orcus?
yeah, so Orc
He's lots of
so
names for
well,
Apollyon.
because in all of the different books, right?
Yeah.
He has to have a different name in all of the different books because otherwise it's going to be too obvious.
Yeah.
And so Prince Pelles killed Finn, and but he betrayed Thea, right? So she thinks that that's a lie. So she thinks that Prince Pelles is actually Anelius, the famed Illyrian warrior. And she theorizes that
Mm.
everything we know about him is wrong. She believes that Pelles tried to overthrow him because he suspected him to be a prince of hell. And we already know that Pelles and Apollyon fought for 3 days. And Anelius fought against the enemy for 3 days.
People
So
are
he was trying to
so
stop
smart.
him from accessing the gate on top of Ramiel. And let's not forget that Hunt finds a vase with the same helmeted Fey warrior fighting Hell's demons 15,000 years ago. That same helmeted warrior is later shown as a statue riding a Pegasus, sword raised, charging into battle. Pegasus are the animals of Duskcourt, obviously, Starborn. He used the horn to banish Apollyon, and Thea and her 2 children then used the horn to seal the gates, which is really crazy to think about because I love the fact that they all have different names in the different universes, but like as we're seeing with the crossover, it just makes sense.
It
Like
just
it
makes
it
sense.
makes sense.
It's just like if it's knotted, I'm gonna be like, that's annoying. I like. Okay, so another question. I'm gonna sprinkle another question
Okay,
in here.
gotcha.
Another question in here is: do we think that Throne of Glass will play a part, or just a Court of Thorns and Roses in Crescent City? Obviously, we've just been talking about it. We think that Throne of Glass is absolutely going to be a part of this, and I think that, like in terms of the full crossover, I think Throne of Glass is one of the most important series in it. Like, I think that we get the most from it. There are so many indications in
So many tasty
ACOTAR.
tidbits.
Yeah, there's so many parts in ACOTAR and Crescent City that talk about, oh, an ancient language of like swirls and whirls and like symbols, and it's like, and like the horn is written in this ancient language of symbols, and I'm like, it's all fucking word marks.
Word
All of
marks,
it's word marks. Word
obviously.
marks are on everything. And I also think, because they talk about the night court's bargain tattoos
Mhm.
are always described as swirls and whirls. What else is described as a swirl and a whirl? A fucking word mark. So it's just like everything is connected.
It's all connected. And
Yeah.
I think this ties into a really important piece in Crescent City about why we think it's connected is Lydia, aka the
Lydia the Hind.
Now, well, there's a lot of pieces in Crescent City that make me reflect on the Throne of Glass
Yeah.
world, which we'll get into Lydia, but there's a really big theory that Crescent City is at Midgard is actually the same world as Throne of Glass, just in the future, right? We think about
Hmm.
Prithian being an entirely separate entity and like a different world, whereas Throne of Glass is potentially like Terrasen is the same because if we think about it, Terrasen in Latin means old earth,
Yep.
whereas Midgard, if you're familiar with Norse mythology, is the new world,
Yeah.
right? So it's kind of like old and new, and we kind of think about that. I think it's also peculiar that in Crescent City, we've only gotten a small little snippet of the map, right? Like we have no concept of what
It's literally only
continents
the
are
city.
on. We don't know anything about like what the other
Yeah.
towns look like or anything like that. And so, and again, Rune Mountains,
Hmm.
they have witches who worship the three-faced goddess. Where else did we see witches who worship the three-faced goddess?
Hmm.
In Throne of Glass, we have like healers. We have kind of shifters, like shifter phase. Like we have a lot
Yeah.
of similar commonalities between the people and Throne of Glass world historically a human and fae combined world. So I think there's a lot that kind of
Yeah.
play into the fact that we are headed towards some sort of
Giant
connection.
crossover.
And if you think about, like, Jezebel having, the Book of the Walking Dead in her library, what Aelin reads that, right? Not only does she have the Book of Breathings, but she has that book,
Mhm.
so I think that's an important note. And then in terms of Lydia, almost an exact replica of Aelin.
Yeah.
Just, like, descriptions almost to a
Yep.
T, similar powers, and obviously huge deer kind of
And the fact
stag.
that Lydia's dad is a stag shifter.
Yes, right? And the fact that Aelin's whole thing is kind of Terrasen and the Lord of the North is a stag, and
Yep.
that's really important to note. And it's also important to note that Lydia, it's very, like, it's kind of a throwaway line as well, but they talk about the piece of jewelry that she's wearing, which is a thick cut gold, or a gold ring with a thick cut ruby on it, which is exactly the same ring that Aelin gives to Rowan when they get quote unquote married in Kingdom of Ash. So I think that it's all too similar.
Too similar.
But the thing is it Aelin reincarnated? We talk a little bit in the Crescent City episode about how I'm not unconvinced that Hypaxia didn't have something to do with this.
Mhm.
That she came back because, like, maybe
Yeah.
Danica learned about, something that happened and they contacted her. I don't fucking know. Or is Lydia Rowan and Aelin's descendant at some point, and this has just been passed down? So
Yeah.
I don't know, but it's too similar to not be considered
Yeah.
Throne of Glass-esque.
100%. 100%.
But there's also, do you have any other theories about the connections?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think I'm good to move on to whatever
No.
you're go
Okay.
wherever you're going. Oh, well,
What
I can talk about my Aelin Fire Sprite crockpot theory that
Okay,
I
go
love.
ahead.
So my big crockpot theory that I have absolutely no supporting evidence for is that I think the fire sprites are descended from Aylin's magic that she
Mhm.
had to let go of.
Yep.
And I just think they're like little balls of fire and they're always like, I don't know. I just feel like I don't know. I just feel like I would love that.
I mean, I hear it. I don't
I
think
think I
it's
had
bad.
another reason the other day, but I don't know what it was. But because I think they have something to do with it because there's like crossover in the line that Lahaba says that Bryce, like, it sounded like she was like reciting a chant and she was like, I am descended from so and so and I am
Mhm.
not afraid. My friends are
Mhm.
behind me and I will protect them. And then it went into my friends are with me and I am not afraid. And that goes back to in Throne of Glass, like we learn like Selena and Aelin are always saying like
Yeah.
when she's in the salt mines, she's always saying, my name is Selena Sardothian, I am not
I'm
afraid.
not
My
afraid.
name is Selena Sardothian, and I am not afraid. And then we find out she got that from Sam, who would say, like, my name is Sam Cortland and I am not afraid.
Yeah.
And so it's just like two kind of similar where I'm like, I wonder if there's like a little kernel of something that
Yeah.
created this line of little fire sprites.
Yes. Also connection, the bone carver.
Oh my god, this is my favorite one. Oh my god, yeah, go
The
go go
bone
go go.
carver
Oh, this
is
is
the
my
Sin
favorite
Eater
one.
from Throne of Glass.
Is who
Like,
from Throne of
that
Glass?
is the Sin Eater.
Yeah,
Um and it is just to people write their sins on bones and leave that in the temple, and obviously to ask anything of the bone carver, you have to give him a bone that is important to you. And so the connections just simply make sense.
yeah, and
um
is the Sin Eater also like that's what like that like temple right that they go to?
He's also, yeah, so, and I don't remember what his official title is, but, like, you have to tell the truth to him. Like, there's something around the truth, and you can't lie to the bone carver. He
Right.
always knows when you're lying. So, like, the similarities between those two is too
Yeah. Because
common.
like Aelin and them go to that temple, and
Yeah.
there's just like bones carved everywhere. These like gruesome scenes, and it's like that's everyone's death that the bone carver has been carving.
Yes.
So
Okay.
I've seen a theory that is like that temple is legitimately the bone carver's cell, and they're existing on like
top of each other.
on top of each other,
Ooh,
like on opposite sides of like a like two-way
yeah,
mirror or something. And so like as he's carving the bones and like putting them aside, it like goes through and like appears in the Throne of Glass world, which I'm
I
like,
love that.
that I'm obsessed.
Huge, love that.
I'm obsessed.
Okay, so I mentioned how timeline-wise, Midgard is just new Terrasen, right? So
Yeah.
it is said in Crescent City that many thousands of years ago, prior to the Asteries invasion of Midgard, there existed another civilization. More specifically, when asked this what this world was like before the Asteri, Therian notes that there used to be ancient humans and their gods who lived here, exactly like Throne of Glass. And part of this ancient civilization, they lived in a place called Parthos, right?
Mhm.
Um, Interestingly, like I said, we only get a little bit of Crescent City. Um, so Throne of Glass was in the past, and so there's much debate about the timeline, but there are plenty of hints to suggest that the time travel is indeed possible. We've already kind of seen this, right?
Mhm.
So although this pre-civilization that existed prior to the Asteri is treated as conspiracy theory by the Crescent City civilians, Apollyon takes Bryce to, quote, a dream world that's said to be where Parthos was, the library of this ancient civilization used to exist. Bryce notes that what remains of Parthos is a dusty plain, right? Don't forget
Mhm.
this.
Don't
And
forget
then in
it.
ACOTAR, the bone carver mentions that the world he and his siblings came from is nothing more than a dusty plain, nothing more. In doing so, the bone carver draws three interlocking circles into the ground, right? This is the
Yeah.
symbol of Bryce's Archesian necklace, which is the symbol of Parthos. If this theory is correct, then the bone carver originated from the Throne of Glass world, which we've already kind of talked about how he's a sin eater.
Mhm.
And so, but perhaps the most telling clue is that Parthos is referred to as a dusty plain, and consider then Rowan's words to Aelin. I love you. There is no limit to what I can give you, no time I need. Even when this world is a forgotten whisper of dust between the stars, I will love you. And even further proof of this theory, recall when Bryce uncovered the Asteri's secret at the end of Crescent City 2, she found notes on how Midgard came to be. These notes detail that the indigenous life was not sustainable, right? Obviously, this is when they want to go back to Prithian because they're running out of magic. This is the exact problem that the Valg previously faced with the humans in the Throne of Glass world, as they too were the beings who fed on magic. Additionally, on the same page of those notes, Midgard, there's a sketch of both a wolf shifter and a mer. These two are the two species confirmed to be Throne of Glass Fae. So why were the Throne of Glass Fae in the Asterius Midgard pre-colonization notes? If indeed the Throne of Glass world existed in the past and what was destroyed to make Midgard, then I believe Crescent City is situated on the southern continent of the Throne of Glass world. More specifically, as Lunithian is said to be modeled after, quote, ancient city, I believe it's modeled after Antica, right? And we think about the owl above Jezebel's
Yeah.
library, a lot of owl iconography in Throne of Glass being the healers,
Yeah.
being, they had the whole library with all of that knowledge. And don't forget, in Tower of Dawn, Antica is described as a city surrounded by a wall lined with olive groves and wheat farms bordering the city. What did Carly
Mhm.
say in the Crescent City? She's like, they've really been hitting the olive groves a lot in Crescent City. Like, I don't understand why.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Lunithian is described in the exact same way. The olive groves and little farms lined the distant hill beyond the city borders.
Whoa, whoa, whoa,
Too
whoa.
close. They both have arid climates, and this suggests that the lost library of Parthos is the Torre Sesme. Sesme?
I
How
have
do you say
no
that?
idea how we say that,
Okay,
to be
perhaps
honest.
the most sacred building of all. The Torre is also a library, one that was arguably the largest in the Throne of Glass world, and certainly ever to be built.
Another crossover.
Tell me.
Where did the Asteri live? What is it called? It's called the
The
Crystal
Crystal Palace.
Palace.
I know.
And what's in Throne of Glass? The Glass Castle.
Yes. And so we also think about Urine having Starborn. If you think about the powers that Urine has, she has this healing light. Basically, she is equivalent to having Starborn Fae
Yeah.
powers, right? And let's not forget, Jezebel basically says, acts like she's seen a ghost when she learns of Bryce's powers. And this makes more sense when you consider that Hypaxia's tutor was brought back to life using necromancy and was originally an inhabitant of Parthos.
Yeah.
Hypaxia states that this tutor specifically trained her in healing magic, just
It's
like the
fucking
healers of the
urine.
Torre. So this is where we kind of get Aelin back, where she's obviously really craft
Mhm.
in
Mhm.
necromancy. Also, let's not forget that House of Flame and Shadow is so identical to Aelin's name, Queen of Flame and Shadow. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
sorry, you're gonna tell me that those two are not related
Yeah.
at all? I don't fucking think so, bitch. And
So
so
here's another
also,
thing also in
there's a
terms of like
lot of
oh.
there's a lot of Crescent City places that sound like Throne of Glass places. Like Mora is like Morath, Corinth is like Orinth.
Mhm.
And there's so many word marks everywhere in Crescent City, especially underwater where a lot of the ruins of the ancient civilization used to be. So I think that there's no shot we're not getting a Throne of Glass crossover at this point. Like it is
Yeah.
just too fucking similar.
Okay. Well, here's a question that I have then.
Tell me.
Because I'm thinking about this like healing magic, light from within. That sounds like the Dawn Court in
Yes.
Prithian. So I'm like, duh, how'd that work? So like did like half of the Dawn Court end up in the Dusk Court and like now I'm
Well,
just doing some research because now I'm putting that
maybe they were visiting and
together.
then happened to get kind of
Yeah.
crossed over, you know?
Yeah.
We simply don't know. But I've seen a theory that the Dawn Court people are descendants of Urine and Kale. Like
Mhm.
that's kind of where it started.
Yeah.
Or even the Starborn are descendants of that.
Mhm.
I don't know what the truth is. I Urine definitely has something to say or
Y-
like has
yeah.
some play in this because their powers are just too similar.
Too similar. Yeah. Hmm. It is. Oh God, there's just so much good stuff. There's just so much good stuff, dude.
And let's not forget that obviously the cauldron, they have to find the three legs. How
Mm-hmm.
many word keys are there?
3.
Three, right? And then if we think about Eye of Elena versus the
Amulet.
amulet that Bryce wears.
Yep.
Also in Prithian, they worship the three-faced goddess. We've got the mother,
Yep.
the
Maiden
maiden,
and the
and the
crone.
crone, right? And it's very interesting that basically the cauldron is also has to be a portal, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because Jezebel or Pharaoh throws the book of breathings into the cauldron, ends up in Crescent City. How?
Wait, what?
Feyre in End of ACOTAR throws the Book of Breathings into the cauldron.
Yeah.
And in Crescent City, we learn
Oh,
it's
I
in
thought you meant
Jezebel's.
Feyre ended up in Crescent City, and I was like,
No.
I missed that. I missed a big thing, I think.
No, Jezebel has the book
Right,
now,
right,
right?
right, 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 right,
So,
right.
kind of interesting.
Kind of fucking interesting. Another way that we think that Throne of Glass is coming into it, and this is a new theory that we just found out about the other week, is so Sandriel's Triari
Mhm.
is the hammer, the hind, the harpy, the hellhound, and the hawk.
Mhm.
All of them show up throughout the two books except for the hawk.
Mhm.
We also, in
Who
Throne of
else?
Glass,
Who else was a hawk that we never fucking saw?
well, he was an osprey, which is kind of throwing me off. But
Mm.
so, because then if we go to Throne of Glass, Maeve
Well,
has
because
a
Rowan is a hawk.
Rowan's a hawk. So this is where it's not really adding up to me, but I'm gonna get there in a second. Stay with me, all
Stay
right?
with me. I'm
Stay with
staying with
me.
you.
So, because Maeve has basically a triari, they call them
Mhm.
like it's the cadre or
The
whatever
cadre, yeah.
of Fenris, his brother Connell, I think.
Funnel.
Fenris, Connell,
Gabrielle.
Lorcan, Gavriel, uh,
Rowan
Rowan,
and
and
Vaughn.
Vaughn. And Vaughn is never there. Vaughn shows up in the one book to like defend the like city like thing, whatever the town that she's staying in.
Against
Um
the Valg that first kind of time where
yeah,
yeah.
against the Valg that first time, but then he's gone and he's nowhere. And the excuses for where he are doesn't make sense. We've already said he's supposed to be looking for Lorcan, who's just with everyone else. So like he's doing a really bad job. Or what makes more sense is they're lying about where he is, and he's not
Mhm.
actually doing that. So it's just interesting that there is and he in that book he is an osprey, which is
Yeah.
like a big bird. So there are theories that they are the same, and the hawk from Crescent City is actually Vaughn, who is the osprey in Throne of Glass. And here's where I think maybe the name is different, because I feel like maybe if he had like abandoned
Mhm.
Maeve, and if that's maybe what happened, and he found a way to like go through a portal, something, he obviously would not want to be like, oh, it's me, the osprey, because she would know. So
Yeah.
maybe he was like, okay, I'm a big bird. Who else do I know? And he's like, oh, Rowan is a hawk. Maybe I'll just go with that.
Mm.
And like uses that as a calling card instead.
Okay.
Who knows? I don't know. Not
Hey,
me.
listen,
Who knows? Not me.
we're here for crackpot theories today. That's what
Crockpot,
we're here for.
a quick 30-minute crockpot meal.
Okay. One thing I kind of want to discuss quickly is our theories on Fury.
Wait. Oh, I meant to say something about the bone carver.
Okay, tell me
I'm so
more.
sorry.
That's okay.
I'm so sorry. I meant to say something about the bone carver. Is that I think that if the bone carver originated from Throne of Glass, I think, stay with me here, maybe the Weaver is one of the witch
Mhm.
matriarchs,
Okay.
because they are all described as being like very young and beautiful, and they eat humans.
I hear that.
And I think
I saw
do
an insane theory about the Weaver the other
okay, but
day.
also did the okay, so there's the Iron Teeth witches, and then there's
Yellow legs,
the Iron Teeth, the Yellow Legs, the
the
Blue
blue
Bloods.
bloods.
But what are they? Those are because there's two types of witches. So there's the ones that wear the red
Oh,
cape.
there's the iron teeth, and then there's the
Crocian.
yes.
Do the Crocians also eat people?
No.
Bummer. Okay.
But I think that more is the other witch, not an iron tooth witch.
A Crocian witch. Well, because I was
Yes.
going to say maybe the Weaver, because when we meet Manon and she is like impersonating a Crocian witch, she's
Mhm.
in a cottage in the woods,
Mhm. True.
and that feels very Weaverish.
But the thing with more is
Yeah,
that
tell me.
okay, what what do the Crocian witches wear?
Red
Red capes.
capes,
What is more always in?
always in red.
Red. They discuss how the witches get their magic when they have their first bleeding. More talks about the fact that she came into her powers when
Mm-hmm.
she had her first period. Also, drawing the parallels between, we talked about this a little bit, I think, in Throne of Glass episode, where Moore is kind of treated the same way that Asterin is treated, where like she has the cuts across her
Yep.
womb, right?
Yep.
And so that's a big deal. And I just think there, it also like the witches say that they're like called to the wind, right? And Moore
Mm-hmm.
is always like, oh, like I love riding horses because I love feeling like the wind in my hair. Like it's
Yes.
my
Yeah,
favorite
yeah,
way to
yeah.
travel. Like I'd rather travel like that than
Yes.
winnowing. Um, and so I think that she
And they're
has witch
also
blood in her.
I'm on the Crocian wiki, and it's the Crocian witches are described as peaceful and beautiful, taking after their Fey ancestors, but are talented and dangerous warriors. And
Yeah.
Moore is like a famous warrior.
Yeah. Yeah. So also they're healers and wise women, kind
Mm-hmm.
of similar to Moore's power of healing and truth.
Yeah.
So
And there's like all the ideas that Nesta is an Iron Tooth witch.
Mhm.
or like the being of that, and she and Moore do not get along.
Yeah.
Like, don't like each other. And the Iron Teeth and the Crosians don't like each
Yeah.
other. So that is also
Yeah.
hmm.
Because there's also the fact that it's like, okay, more it has witch like kind of blood in her. Or interesting, how do we get witches? Faye breeds with Valg. Could Kier be Valg?
Ooh. Ooh, I like
That is a
that.
possibility as well.
Yeah. Cuz he has like golden hair like Moore.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Also, yeah, with the witches, reproduction is difficult and often dangerous. So why would Moore really not want to have to go to Eris to be bred like a prize mare? Because she doesn't want to get pregnant.
Yep. Also, Hypaxia is also a witch queen,
Yep.
right? Could Moore also be a witch queen and they're gonna come together similar in Throne of Glass?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe.
Hmm.
Yeah, I just think that we need to know more about more. More about more,
Yeah.
essentially, is what I'm looking
Yeah.
for. Okay.
Okay. You were gonna go into what were you about to go into?
Fury.
Fury. Yeah, we gotta talk about
We
Fury.
gotta talk about
We
Fury.
gotta talk about the Fury Amryn look like comparisons, and everyone's like Fury is described the exact same way as Amryn, like, and they're both like lethal, and no one knows what they are.
Yes.
Feels right. And even when Bryce lands in Prithian and all of them are coming in, she talks about how Amryn looks like has like a sleek black bob and looks just
Mhm.
like Fury and like
Yeah.
upturned eyes just like Fury.
Yes. But the thing
Which
is
like
is
Amryn chose this form. So it's
right. So
not like
Amryn
that's who she
chose her
was.
form, right.
So it's not it doesn't necessarily mean that Fury and Amryn are related, but
Right.
maybe they knew each other because Amryn like only knew to choose a form that looked
Yeah.
like Fury.
Yeah. So it's really interesting, but I think one of the best theories that like I've heard is that Fury is Thanos's daughter. And
Mhm.
that's who he's having trouble with.
Yeah.
And
Because
that
they always say they also don't ever know where Fury is. They're
yeah,
like, we think she's on the continent, but nobody knows.
she's super secretive. And in Crescent City 2, we learned that Fury knew what Bryce was or Danica was up to. Danica had learned some information about Fury that could have potentially put her in a lot of danger,
Yeah.
right? And if we think about Fury's name, Fury is similar to in Greek mythology, one of the Furies
Yep.
who basically is like kind of sets your fate. Fury is an assassin, right? And the fates snip your line and they kill you. And they work for Hades, who is notoriously one of the gods of the underworld. So it kind of makes sense in that train of thought that
Mhm.
she is kind of a princess of the pit or a princess of hell doing the dirty work of her father in
Yeah.
in other worlds.
It also supports my personal theory that Juniper has a role to play in these books because Juniper's dating Fury and Juniper is the only one that Fury talks to. And so like
Mhm.
what does Juniper know?
Yes.
What does she know? And also, I also think that that works really well with the Danica thing because if Danica scented that on Fury, maybe she scented that she wasn't from there and that's literally what struck up her research into where they all come from.
Mhm. Yeah.
And maybe Fury never even really liked Danica, but was more like keeping an eye on her. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
once they found out that dangerous secret about each other, I wouldn't put it past Fury to be like, okay, friends close, enemies closer.
Right.
Because also, why the fuck was Fury at college? That's my big thing. The whole thing, I'm like, you guys met in
Well,
college, and
no,
they talk about being in class together.
well,
Fury's like, ever since that one
apparently
class, and I'm like, Fury did not go to fucking college. There's no way.
apparently no, I think we might have missed this. She was sent on a mission to Crescent City
Oh,
University and coincidentally
oh
became
my
friends with
god,
Bryce and
22 Jump
Danica.
Street.
Literally, find the supplier, infiltrate the or
Infiltrate the
infiltrate the
dealers,
dealer,
find the
find the
supplier.
supply. Literally, and let's not forget that Fury forced Jezebel to hire Bryce, in
Mm.
which Jezebel gave her the amulet for safety, and Fury has kind of been pushing Bryce along just from the start, similar to Apollyon and Adis. They've kind of been guiding her towards her inevitable fate. So she's questionable, and maybe it's that Amryn has seen what the Furies look like, and
Yeah.
she decided to model herself after that
Yeah. I also think, and
because
we
they're fucking
tried
scary.
very. We also started to talk about this in the ACOTAR episode, and I had to cut it out for
Oh, right.
potential spoilers. But when we talked about the mercenary, the one
Mm,
at the very, very beginning of ACOTAR, when Feyre's trying to sell the hot skin of the wolf that she kills, that's actually a Fey, there's only one person that would pay her for it, and it was a mercenary who
right.
didn't want the skin, or like was going to maybe use it to wear it or something, but paid her and like gave her a nudge in a direction, aka pushing her towards her fate. And there's a theory that that is Fury,
Exactly.
and I think that that would really tie out the whole thing together about Fury being one of the Furies that ties your fate, because she's always kind of there at the beginning pushing characters to like do things that they
Also,
need
don't
to do.
forget, I approached the mercenary whose thick, dark hair was shorn to her chin.
Yep.
She had a short
A
bob, bitch.
Bob.
She had a short, dark bob, bitch. Who does that sound like?
Two people I know.
Her tan face seemed hewn of granite, and her black eyes narrowed slightly at the sight of me. Such interesting eyes, not just one shade of black, but many, with hints of brown that glimmered amongst the shadows. Don't forget that Fury often seemingly seems to appear out of shadows whenever she arrives on the scene to places. So, just saying.
Just saying.
Just saying that the pieces are kind of there, like it's kind of like
The
set
pieces are
kind of
there.
set for you. Literally, it's just like I pushed against that useless part of my mind, the instincts that had me thinking about color and light and shape, and kept my shoulders back as she assessed me as a potential threat. The weapons on her, gleaming and wicked, were enough to make me swallow and stop a good 2 feet away. So she's armed to the tooth, and that is historically Fury. She's always got
Yeah.
weapons on that bitch. So,
And everyone's nervous when they see her, no matter what.
yep.
I love that theory.
Sorry,
You
I'm
know what we
ruining
need to
the
really talk about?
conversation.
We need to talk about the Dusk Court, because we've kind of like discussed it, but we haven't actually discussed it, you know?
Hold
We
on,
haven't
hold on.
gone hard into it.
Okay, yeah, let's get into it.
So I think the most prevalent theory out there that everyone has pretty much decided is true. Like it's as true as it can be without having it written down yet, by Sarah, is that the prison island, or some people think Hybern, but regardless, one of the islands off of Prithian used to be the Eighth Court.
Yep.
You know, we've had people bring Feyre to the prison island and have them say, like, this actually, there's rumors that this used to be an Eighth Court, and it's always like looks like Twilight there. And so people think that that was the Dusk Court. What else is there? Project or Dusk's Truth in Crescent City. And it's basically confirmed through fans only, that
It's canon at this point.
yeah, that the harp was used, like Nesta saw, that the people that lived on that island in the Dusk Court were basically, a portal was opened using the harp, and they were sent to Midgard. And the people of Midgard that are from the Dusk Court are the Avalon Fae. So there's kind of all of these details. Like the Avalon Fae are the ones that have more of like the Starborn powers, that have shadow powers. They live a little bit less modern
Mhm.
than the people in Crescent City. So kind of everything points to that being a little bit more like Prithian esque. That's also where Rune's mom is from. She's one of the Avalon Fae. It's where Cormac is from. And then you get into Bryce. And
Mhm.
Bryce is rumored to like descend from the Avalon Fae. as well, and she's kind of thought to be maybe in the line to be the
But,
High
like,
Lady of the Dusk
for
Court.
me, where does that lineage come through? Because
Yeah,
Rune is a Valen through
right,
his mom, not his dad, and
right.
so his they have different moms. So, like, where
Yeah,
does like, we have to figure out where
yeah,
this
where how
lineage
Bryce
comes
gets that.
from.
Yeah, it's interesting, but there's also something because there's the fact that Bryce's star, the 8-pointed star on her chest, glows in the presence of people that are connected to where she is from, like the original world that she's from,
Mhm.
or that her people are from. And it always shines for Cormac, who is one of the Avalon Fae. It shines sometimes for Rune, who is Starborn, who has the powers of the Avalon Fae. And then everything about Bryce is always described as dusk.
Mhm.
So in the first book, when she goes to get her
Percent.
nails done, she gets her nails done, and Hunt describes it as like the sky at twilight. Um, he also describes her nipples as being a dusky pink several times.
Dusky or dusty?
Dusky,
Okay,
D-U-S-K, dusky
weird.
pink.
Okay.
Very weird. I noticed that so many times in Crescent City too. I was like, okay, stop calling her nipples dusky pink. That's so weird. But like her scent is also supposed to smell like the like when the stars first come out, which is twilight. So there's like all these things that hint towards the fact that Bryce is meant to come from the Dusk Court and maybe be the
Mhm.
High Lady of the Dusk Court. Also, the fact that she is Starborn, and so she has the sword that was in a cave in Avalon.
Yep.
We think that the cave is the portal to Prythian, and that's like the cave of the prison on the Dusk Court. And then there's the whole thing about how the Fae in Midgard have the saying, when sword and knife are reunited, so shall our people be.
Yep.
And it's basically confirmed that the Star Sword that Bryce has is Gwydion from Prythian, which is the sister sword to Asriel's truth teller dagger. So
Mhm.
then there's the question of like, well, why the fuck does Asriel have this like legendary dagger that will unite people from the Dusk Court? So
Yep.
then people are like, okay, well, we still don't know Asriel's mom. We don't know who she is. We don't even know if she's still
We
alive.
don't know who his dad is either.
Yeah. So
We
people are
know
like,
nothing.
is Asriel actually from the
Well,
Dusk
I think
Court?
he says his mom is still alive because she lives at Rose Hall.
They never say who it is.
Mm.
He says, I have to go to Rose Hall, and I think Cassian says like, tell her hi from me, but
Which
they
do
don't
we
say
think
her.
which I was thinking about this. Obviously, one of the like parts of Crescent City is like the Five Roses, which is where Rune lives.
Hmm.
Coincidental, maybe.
Yeah,
Or maybe it means something.
maybe.
It's not out of the question.
And if you think about it, the extra chapter, the bonus chapter with Asriel, the necklace that he tries to give Elaine but then gives to Gwen is a rose.
Mhm. So, just saying, I think it's too coincidental.
Yeah. So I don't know, but then there's like the question of like, does Asriel like is Asriel's mom from the Dusk Court, or is his dad? Is that why he has the dagger? What happens when Bryce and Asriel are together with the sword and the dagger? Is Asriel gonna have to give up his dagger to Bryce, or is Bryce
Mhm.
gonna have to give the sword to Asriel? They're gonna have to work together. Like, what is that gonna be? Like, how are those gonna be worked together? So that is super interesting. There's like this whole idea that Asriel is actually Bryce's mate, and that they're gonna rule the
Which,
Dusk Court together,
you
which
and I
we
do
don't like.
not subscribe to at all.
We don't
No.
subscribe to that. Um, but I do think it's interesting to think that Bryce could be the one that like rules the Dust Court or like brings them all back together. But does that
Well,
also mean that
also,
she's going to be the High Lady or like the High Queen of Prythian? That's what people think that she's there for. I don't know. It's there's so many possibilities.
well, let's not forget to the imagery in Crescent City too. Bryce is very obviously obsessed with Jelly Jubilees, obsessed with the Pegasus, right? And what used to live on the prison island, Pegasus,
Pegasus.
right? And so there's a theory actually that since Bryce is going to be essentially a high lady of the Dust Court, that we know all of the high lords have like animal figures. They can shift into like a beast form. People speculate that Bryce's is going to be a Pegasus,
Mm.
which I find really interesting because they've also theorized that SJM has been very vocal about her obsession with Sailor Moon, I think, and one other like unicorn movie. I can't remember what it was called. But basically in that movie or in that series, the unicorn was basically able to like funnel power out of its horn, light
Ooh.
power out of its horn, which people are like, seems a little on the nose that Bryce has a horn tattooed in her back and her power is like light, like very bright light, kind of funneling out. So that's why they're like,
Interesting.
we think that like her form is going to be like a unicorn Pegasus situation, which I was like, okay, fucking love that.
Love that. There's also like I feel like all of the courts have some sort of like aerial army or like legion.
Hmm.
So that could also be like the Pegasus, and also who has traditionally ridden the Pegasus, the Valkyrie, and who's back now, the Valkyrie with Nesta, Gwen,
Let's
Emery, and
go.
the rest of the priestesses. So that would be fucking sick.
So sick. Yeah, I just can't wait. Like, oh, I'm so excited for them all to like fucking meet each other. Like, I just
I
want everyone
know.
like Bryce
The
is
the
gonna be
thing that
like,
I'm like, how the fuck are they gonna talk though? Because Bryce
I
only
know.
speaks the. I'm like, they have to figure it out at some point. But I'm like, I wonder what it's gonna, how that's gonna happen.
Well, what
Because it can't be like
language?
Ice Planet Barbarians where she just looks into something and all of a sudden she can speak the language.
So true. Yeah, I have no idea. I want to talk about one of my favorite theories regarding
Okay.
the next book.
Okay. Love. Let's go.
And we talked a little bit about this in the ACOTAR book. But one of the theories is that Elaine is potentially evil,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yes.
So this is one of my favorite theories, and this is not one I put together. This is Emily's, right? But it has to do with Elaine like being a seer, right? So to begin the theory, we have to look at Kosheki, and at the end of Silver
Who?
Flames, is it Koshi? Kosheki? It's
Oh,
Koshi.
Koshi. Okay. I was
Sorry.
sorry.
I'm adding a vowel there or a consonant at Koshi. At the end of A Court of Silver Flames, it's hinted that Koshi will be the next big bad villain, right?
Right.
He's regarded as a god of death. And in the Throne of Glass series, it's suggested that gods are omnipresent beings and they can exist in multiple places and across multiple worlds at the same time. Thus, although Koshi is confirmed to be in the lake in Prithian, what if he's able to move about freely in other worlds? Now,
Mm.
it's for this reason that Emily theorizes that Koshi is also the astronomer in Crescent City. I love this one. I was like, okay, not believing it, but then as you keep going, listen, stay with me,
Whoa.
stay with me.
Okay.
So, although the astronomer presents as a feeble old man, the fire sprites warn that this is just an act. They insist that he's an ancient sorcerer, and which Koshi is also referred to as an ancient sorcerer. Quote, "We were bespelled by the astronomer. He's an ancient sorcerer. Don't let him deceive you with that feeble act." Further, when the astronomer first introduces himself to Bryce, he says that, quote, "Some people call me the astronomer." When Bryce questions as to what else he's called, the astronomer does not reply. Additionally, the astronomer is described as an elderly man with a heavy white beard and wispy long hair, which is the identical description of how Koshi is described in the Russian fairy tales from where his character originated.
Mm.
However, the most important clue is the astronomer's black box. Now, remember, Ethan steals the black box and it has the fire sprites and what's her name?
Ariadne.
Ariadne? Yeah,
Ariadne.
Ariadne. And she is a dragon, which what does fire kill? Fire kills a Valg, very important, and Princes of Hell. So is it a coincidence that Koshi also has a black box that is more important than anything else? One of Elaine's visions alluded to the fact that something was stolen from Koshi and that he was very angry, in the same way that the black box was stolen from the astronomer, maybe? If Koshi and the astronomer are indeed the same person and Koshi's black box is the same one that Ethan stole from the astronomer, then you may be wondering why Koshi desires Dragonfire, a force capable of killing the princes of hell. Or is it less to do with Apollyon and Adis and more to do with the other leathered winged beings, the Illyrians? We also know that the astronomer
Mm.
contacted people in other worlds through the use of mystics. So the mystics are submerged in tubs of water, to help with sensory deprivation. Is this why Koshi keeps Fae/humans trapped in his lake? Because it's another body of water to submerge people in. Is he
Ooh.
also using mystics in Prithian? Given the trajectory of the series, Elaine's story is most likely going to involve Koshi as the villain and being a seer. She's also a
Ooh.
mystic, seeing the present and seeing across worlds. In fact, we've already seen Elaine's mystic powers in action in ACOTAR. She's able to track the Surreal in real time, with the Surreal saying, quote, Elaine's eyes peering at him from across the world. But right before this occurred, Feyre noticed that Elaine's tent was dim and quiet, almost dreamlike. It's noted that Elaine was staring blankly at the ceiling and her eyes were glazed. Exact same description as the mystics in their sensory deprivation tanks. In both Crescent City and Throne of Glass, the witches worship, we talked about this, the three-faced goddess, the maiden, the mother, the crone. Again, Elaine's the maiden, the mother
Yeah.
is Nesta, and Brienne is the crone. In Throne of Glass, the maiden was represented by the Blue Blood clan, and Manon describes these witches as the oracles, the mystics, and the zealots, just like Elaine. Manon also goes on to say that despite the Blue Blood's gentle exterior, they are the most dangerous of them all. Does this suggest
Hmm.
that evil Elaine theory does have merit? Question. Or could it be that Elaine is a mystic that's working alongside Koshi? Cassian notes that Elaine's been sneaking off somewhere. Alternatively, taking a step further, Elaine is indeed a mystic. It means that she could contact people across all worlds. So is Elaine going to help contact people in Midgard for Bryce?
Yeah.
Alternatively, when all else fails, Elaine would be able to call on the god killer herself, Aelin. So is this how they're going to reach Aelin through Elaine's kind of like mystic and seeing powers, if she doesn't turn out to be evil?
Interesting.
But I love that concept that, like, because we talked about how earlier with the bone carver, like his temple is in Throne of Glass, but like
Yeah.
alternatively, he's trapped below in Prithian in his cell, right? So is that something where they can kind of, but maybe because the prison like is keeping them locked in, he's not able to really shift between. I think it's really really interesting to think about.
Okay. Love that. I also, this is making me think of also Throne of Glass, the monster in the lake in Air of Fire.
Mhm.
Like, could that be another lake that Koshi
Hmm.
is in because that monster says that it's also from another world?
You're right. How did I get trapped there?
And what is it doing?
Hmm.
What's it doing in that lake?
Things to think about. Things to think about.
I just like, there's so many things that I need to know. I just like, I need this book to be out right now. Right
One of the
now.
theories that scares me, and we talked about like who do we think is likely to die, right?
Hmm.
And we talked about in Crescent City that maybe potentially Hunt is going to die. And so I thought that this was
Either
really
at
a
Bryce's or Rune's hand. That makes
yeah,
me so
right?
sad.
And so just to recap, again, this is another one of my favorite theories from Emily is that Hunt's going to die. And the reason is, right, we talked about Orion. He's either killed by his lover or his lover's brother. And the Oracle says, stay well away from Bryce Quinlan. And he's also parallel to the quote, memento mori, which means remember that you will die. More importantly, Hunt's character appears to be inspired by Jesus Christ. Orion is a constellation
Mhm.
that's symbolic of Jesus, and Jesus was given a crown of thorns upon his death. Hunt has the same crown of thorns tattooed on him. Hunt's referred to as the Umbra Mortis, which means the shadow of death, and the shadow of death is a famous painting depicting Jesus' death.
Fuck.
As per the Bible, Jesus was killed by the Roman Empire, and the Asteri are symbolic of the Roman Empire. The Asteri give the eternal city, or live in the eternal city, which is another name for Rome. And there are 7 hills in the Asteri city. There are 7 hills in ancient Rome that was built on. And the Asteri's symbol is SPQM, and the term SPQR means the Senate and the people of Rome, and was used to symbolize the government of ancient Rome. So Jesus dies via crucifixion. I think we're all familiar with how Jesus dies at the order of the Roman Empire, and the Asteri have already been killing civilians in this way. Remember, what's her name? Justina or whatever was crucified and just left up forever. And
Justinian.
so Justinia, yeah. And so similar to Jesus, we think Hunt's going to potentially die this way. However, similar to Jesus, Hunt will be resurrected.
Oh, well, thank
Quote,
God.
through love, all is possible. He'll be resurrected in the Crescent City world, aka the Dusk Court, where weary souls go to rest. It's never, she theorizes that the Dusk Court never vanished. It was always there, just hidden behind a veil, because the Dusk Court is the afterlife. And
Mm.
as of A Court of Silver Flames, it suggested that the Dusk Court is the prison island, which we discussed. And so, interestingly, in Russian mythology, there's a famous island called Buyan Island. This is where Koshi the Deathless hid his soul in a box on the island. Recall that in ACOTAR, Koshi is hiding a box somewhere. Does this suggest that that island is the Dusk Court Island?
Mm. I mean, I also like the idea that the death court is like where the weary souls goes to rest,
Mm-hmm.
because you also have like you think about it, and they offered the bone carver like freedom,
Mm-hmm.
and he was like, "No, I want to stay here." Like I feel like
Yeah. There's nowhere for me to go. Yeah.
a lot of the prisoners are like ready to just chill there.
Yeah. And so, furthermore, the Buyan, I don't know how to say this, Buyun, Buyan, Buyan, whatever.
Booyah,
Buyan
baby.
Island, I'll refer to it as Buyan. Buyan Island was home to a race of magical unicorns,
Okay.
aka Helian's Pegasus. And the similarities get crazier because Buyan Island was hidden from the world because it held an ancient stone, and the stone was said to be the power of the universe and was inscribed with strange symbols, aka word stones. The symbol of this
Okay.
ancient stone and for the Bunyan Island was an 8-pointed star.
The Bunyan Island. Okay.
Buyan,
I'm gonna call it
Buyan,
Bouillon. She goes
Bu-
on to call it Bunyan.
Booyah Island was an 8-pointed star, just like the symbol of the Dust Court. Most importantly, Buyan Island was seen as an island where heroes go after death. It's said to be the Russian version of the Celtic Avalon Island. Avalon Island is where the Starborn Avalon
Yeah.
Island is where the Starborn and Crescent City currently reside. It was
Wow.
overseen by two sister goddesses, one of dusk and one of dawn. And one of those goddesses was called Danica. Bryce and Danica refer to each other as sisters. I believe that they're both symbolic reincarnations of the two sister goddesses and of the Dusk Court, both symbolic of Thea's two daughters. If Bryce is symbolic of the Buyan Dusk goddess, then Danica would be symbolic of the Dawn goddess, Thea's other daughter who disappeared. Yrene of the Throne of Glass series has starborn powers. Her book was Tower of Dawn, and the Dawn Court has healing powers. If Thea's other daughter ended up in the Throne of Glass world and passed on her starborn powers, and Danica's lineage comes from the Throne of Glass world, and Danica and Yrene were the only two characters to have caramel eyes, I believe Danica figured this out. It was being said in Crescent City 2 that Danica was trying to find her way into a new world where she and Baxian could be together, and she also somehow knew the language of word marks. If the Dusk Court is the afterlife through death, Danica could access this island, a new realm, and it's why her emails were titled Dusk's Truth. Danica was told Sophie to meet her, quote, where the weary souls find relief from their suffering. Sophie then died. We are led to believe that Danica was referring to the meat market, but what if it's a red herring? That Danica told Sophie to die and to meet her at the Dust Court. Connor's last words to Bryce were to, quote, message me when you're home safe. Bryce's star in her chest is to lead her to the Dust Court. Regulus, how do we say it?
Regulus.
Regulus says it'll, quote, lead her home. I think Danica, the Pack of Devils, and Hunt, when he's killed, will be waiting for Bryce to come home, aka the Dust Court.
Well, because also when she sees the pack of devils, when they're on like a grassy plain, and then
Mm-hmm.
she goes over to the bone court, and it's not that. So maybe
Right,
she's actually seeing the dust court. I have
right,
chills. I have
right.
chills. That's a
Hold
good
on.
one.
Hold on. There's a couple more. And so the concept of resurrection and the afterlife has been hinted at heavily throughout the SJM series. In Throne of Glass, Aelin regularly interacts with the, quote, dead. It's shown in Kingdom of Ash that they simply live in a different realm, right? We see Elena coming back and just saying, like, yeah, I'm just in a different place. Further, Cassian says to Nesta that he will, quote, find her in the next world, the next life. And Elaine Asir appears to hint at Cassian's death, and he and Nesta both have tattoo of the Dust Court. Perhaps this also explains Starfall, which we've kind of covered a little bit, that the stars of the spirits are the spirits of the dead going to the Dust Court, which is seemingly why maybe there's less and less each year because the Asteri are eating the First Light and their souls are not able to actually go to the Dust Court. Reese also comments, right, like there's less about. All in all, this theory suggests that the Dust Court never vanished. It's always been there, just different realm veiled. Recall Meryl's theory that there are different realms, but they share the same space, that the worlds are stacked on top of each other. This also doesn't mean that its inhabitants are ghosts. It's no different to the princes and civilians of hell, the opposite of the afterlife. It can be accessed by opening up the word gates, as the Starborn once did. Lastly, in Greek mythology, when Orion is killed, he was immortalized in the sky as a constellation. Zeus also gave him a dog, Sirius, as company. In Crescent City, Sirius is the wolf star Sirius, known as the morning star, otherwise called Danica. I theorize that following Crescent City 3, Danica and Hunt will be keeping each other company in the Dust Court, waiting for Bryce to come home.
I have chills.
Insane. I
I
love that one. Like,
love it.
I'm really scared for Hunt to die, but like I think SJM has a habit of not killing off a lot of her main characters, right? And like I'm never actually mad at her for that because like I don't want them to die. But I think this is a really great way of being like, well, I killed one of my main characters, but I've already proven to you that actually death is not death. It's just kind of like moving on and you'll be like reunited. And
Yeah.
so I would love this concept. The thing is that like a lot of people are like, I don't want Danica to be resurrected. Like I don't want Danica to come back. And I'm like, I hear that. Like Bryce really went through this kind of like beautiful kind of healing about like letting Danica go and like understanding her grief, right? But I think that this is kind of a way to circumvent that, where it's
Yeah.
like it's not necessarily the same person,
Yeah.
it's a different experience. So I'm intrigued by that one.
I love that. I love that a lot. There's so many theories that we could discuss.
We could literally be here for the next 17 hours.
Like truly. Like as long as it takes a crock pot to make a meal,
8
we could
hours
be
on
here.
slow.
8 hours low and slow. But we shouldn't because I mean we could, but
We
I don't
could, but I don't think
I'm
people wanna
tired.
listen to 7
No.
hours of us.
So I think unless there's any other ones that you really want to
No,
bring up
but
right
I
now.
will when this is out, if you make it this far, congratulations. I'll link to Emily's TikToks. Like,
Yeah.
I'll link to her TikTok page so you can just kind of scroll through.
Yeah,
Um,
she's so good.
I'm like, I every time a new one pops up on my page, I'm like, I'm sad.
Yeah.
I'm sad, and I'm immediately sending to everyone I know.
So good. They're so thorough.
So thorough. Like,
Oh,
I'm like, "How are you writing a thesis on this?" Like, I'm
sometimes I'm like,
intrigued.
I wonder if like Sarah J Maas goes to any of these theories, if she's like, having writer's block, how do I tie this in? And then she's like, I'll just go see what other people think is gonna happen, then like picks a good one and is like, that's actually a really good idea.
It's kind of like a choose your own adventure book.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Wow, I really like I can't wait for this book. It's
I know, but similarly, like you said yesterday, like,
I'm sad for it to be
I'm
over.
sad for it to be over. You and me, we have this problem. Like, it's
Like, I literally am the epitome of like, don't cry because it's over, cry because it hasn't happened yet, and then it's gonna be over. Like,
yeah.
that's me.
Yeah. I know. I was like, we've been waiting 2 years and, like, we've been talking about this nonstop that, like, it's gonna happen, and I'm gonna be like, "What do I do now? I'm empty."
Well, now we're just gonna have to reread everything again with the knowledge that
More
we get from
theories.
Crescent
More
City
theories.
3. Yeah. I do think I've only read Throne of Glass once, so I guess I'm gonna have to do a reread there.
It only makes
It
sense.
only makes sense. So, man, this has been so fun. What a fun hour and a half to spend just chatting
Just 2
one
best
of our
friends
favorite
chatting
things,
about books.
just books.
Well, can't wait to hear everyone's opinions on the new book. Can't wait to get into it. So we'll be I would say everyone who's read this book, after you finish, you should join our Discord. We'll start a Crescent City 3 channel, and only people who have finished the book we can have discussions in there.
Yeah. Well, guys, in the meantime, we'll see you in Prithian.
We'll see you in Prithian, bitch.